In the town of Millhaven, Ohio, there is a small brick schoolhouse on Chestnut Street, where for 38 years, a man named Harold Bennett taught the 4th grade. He arrived every morning at 6:40, unlocked the same green door, and hung his coat on the same hook. Nobody in Millhaven thought of Harold Bennett as a man of means. He drove a 1981 Ford pickup with a dent in the tailgate, wore the same 3 cardigans in rotation, and ate lunch out of a metal tin his mother had given him the year he graduated college. When he died at the age of 81, the town expected a modest funeral and an even more modest estate. What they found in his lockbox changed the way an entire community under Harold was born in 1943, the son of a dairy farmer who lost the family's second plot of land during a bad stretch in the 50s. His father used to say that money was a river, not a lake, and that a man's job was to build a dam, not to chase the current. Harold never forgot that. He studied education at a state college on a partial scholarship, waited tables to cover the rest, and took his first teaching job in Millhaven in 1966. At a starting salary of $4,200 a year, stood the word wealthy. Harold's classroom at Millhaven Elementary looked for nearly 4 decades almost exactly the same. 30 small desks arranged in 5 neat rows, a hand-cranked pencil sharpener bolted to the windowsill, and a chalkboard he wiped clean every afternoon with the same damp rag. He believed that children learn discipline not through lectures but through repetition, and he applied that same philosophy to every corner of his own life without ever calling it a philosophy at all. He simply called it doing things properly, the same way, every single day, until the doing became invisible. It was a colleague, an older teacher named Mrs. Alderman, who first told him about payroll deduction investing. She kept a small paper ledger in her desk drawer and explained that if he set aside even $25 from every paycheck, uninvested money would simply evaporate into rent and groceries, but invested money would multiply while he slept. Harold listened. In 1967, he opened an account and began funneling a portion of every check into a low-cost stock index fund. It was not glamorous, it was not exciting. He did not check it daily or even monthly. He simply let the deduction happen, the way rain falls on a roof, whether anyone is watching or not. The 1970s were hard on the market and harder on school teachers. Inflation ate into salaries across the country, and many of Harold's colleagues abandoned their small investment accounts to cover rising costs. Harold did not. He picked up summer work, refinishing furniture, cut his own firewood instead of buying it, and kept the deduction running. When dividends came in, he reinvested every cent rather than spending them, a habit Mrs. Alderman had once called the quiet magic trick of patient people. By 1980, Harold had married a nurse named Ruth, and the two of them lived in a 2-bedroom house they'd bought with a modest down payment and never once refinanced. They raised 2 children on teacher and nurse salaries, and to any outside observer, the Bennett household looked exactly like every other household on their street. Fixed grocery budget, church potlucks, hand-me-down bicycles. What nobody could see was the ledger growing quietly in the background, untouched, uninterrupted, compounding in the dark like a root system beneath a lawn. In October of 1987, the stock market suffered its worst single-day crash since the Great Depression. Harold remembers sitting at the kitchen table that evening while the radio described the chaos on Wall Street. Ruth asked him if they should pull their money out before it disappeared completely. Harold thought about his father's river and his dam, and he told her no. He said the index fund still owned the same companies, making the same products it had owned the day before, and that panic was not a strategy. They kept investing through the crash, and within 2 years, the account had not only recovered, it had grown past where it stood before the crash ever happened. This became the defining pattern of Harold's financial life. He was by nature an unremarkable man in every visible way, but he possessed one trait that set him apart from nearly everyone around him. He did not flinch. When the savings and loan crisis rattled the country in the late 80s, he kept investing. When his own school district froze teacher salaries for 2 years running in the early 90s, he kept investing, trimming his own budget instead of his contributions. Ruth used to joke that Harold treated a stock market crash the way other men treated a rainy weekend, as an inconvenience to be waited out on the porch, not a crisis to be feared. There was a particular evening in 1991 that Harold's daughter remembered for the rest of her life. The family car had broken down for the second time that year, and money was tight enough that Ruth suggested gently that they pause the investment deduction for a few months to cover the repair. Harold said nothing at first. He simply walked out to the garage, pulled his old bicycle down from a hook on the wall, oiled the chain, and began riding it to school every morning instead of driving. The car repair got paid for out of the savings they kept separate for emergencies, and the deduction into the index fund never missed a single month. His daughter said later that it was the clearest lesson in priorities she ever received, and he never once sat her down to teach it directly. By the time the dot-com bubble burst in the year 2000, Harold was 57 years old and had been investing without interruption for 33 years. Technology stocks that had soared for years lost the vast majority of their value in a matter of months. Younger colleagues who had recently begun investing panicked and sold at the bottom, locking in devastating losses. Harold, whose fund was broadly diversified across the entire market, rather than concentrated in speculative technology names, watched his balance dip but never touched a cent of it. He used to tell his students, without ever revealing why, that patience was the only subject not taught in school, and that it mattered more than all the others combined. Ruth passed away in 2003 after a short illness, and for a time, Harold considered retiring early to grieve in peace. Instead, he found comfort in his classroom, in the small rituals of chalk dust and multiplication tables, and in the quiet continuation of the habit he and Ruth had built together for 36 years. He kept investing every paycheck, exactly as he had the year they married, because stopping felt like abandoning something she had believed in. The financial crisis of 2008 tested Harold more severely than any downturn before it. Home values in Millhaven collapsed. Several of his former students, now adults with mortgages of their own, lost their homes entirely. The stock market fell by nearly half its value within 18 months, and news anchors used words like collapse and catastrophe on a nightly basis. Harold was 65 that year, an age when many advisors would have told him to pull back sharply from stocks. A friend from church, a retired machinist named Walt, sold nearly his entire portfolio in November of 2008 after watching the news each night with growing dread, and moved everything into cash just weeks before the market began its recovery. Walt never fully rebuilt what he lost. Harold watched his friend's mistake from a distance and simply reaffirmed quietly that his own money was not going anywhere. He did not sell a single share. He kept his contributions steady, reinvested every dividend as always, and told a young teacher down the hall, who was terrified of losing her retirement savings, that the market had recovered from every crash in its history, and that the only investors who lost permanently were the ones who sold at the bottom out of fear. He retired from teaching in 2011 at the age of 68, having taught more than 1,100 children to read, to multiply fractions, and, in his own quiet way, to wait patiently for good things. His retirement was unremarkable to everyone who knew him. He kept the same truck, now with 2 more dents, fished on Saturday mornings at the reservoir outside town, and volunteered reading hours at the very same schoolhouse where he'd spent his career. He never mentioned his investment account to anyone, not his children, not his closest friends, not even his pastor. It was not secrecy born of shame. It was simply a private, unhurried habit that had never needed an audience. In March of 2020, as the pandemic sent markets into a violent and sudden decline, Harold was 77 years old. His daughter called him in a panic, urging him to move his savings into something safer before it was too late. Harold told her the same thing he'd told every panicked investor for 5 decades. He said a falling market was not the danger. Selling into a falling market was the danger. He stayed the course one final time, and within a little over a year, his account had not only recovered, but reached the highest value it had ever held. Harold Bennett died peacefully in his sleep in the spring of this year, at the age of 81. His funeral service lasted just under an hour, held at the same small Methodist church where he and Ruth had been married 60 years earlier. Afterward, his daughter drove to the modest house on Willow Street to begin the slow, quiet work of sorting through a life. The closet in his bedroom held little of note: a handful of cardigans, a shoebox of report cards he'd kept from favorite students, and, tucked beneath a stack of folded quilts, a grey steel lockbox she had never seen before. It was his daughter, going through his belongings, who found the lockbox in his closet, and inside it, a single brokerage statement dated the week before he passed. The account, built from $25 deductions on a teacher's salary that never once exceeded $52,000 a year, had grown through 57 years of uninterrupted patience, dividend reinvestment, and quiet discipline through 6 separate market crashes, to a final value of $2,931,000. He left instructions, handwritten on a single page, dividing the account between his 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and a scholarship fund for graduating seniors from Millhaven Elementary who intended to become teachers themselves. At the bottom of the page, in the same careful cursive he'd used to grade 38 years of spelling tests, he had written a single line. He wrote that money was never about the number in the account, but about the discipline it took to leave it alone, and that anyone on any salary could build a river into a lake if they were only willing to. The town of Millhaven now awards the Harold Bennett Memorial Scholarship every spring to a graduating student pursuing a career in education. Few of the recipients know the full story behind the man whose name appears on the certificate. They know only that he was a school teacher, that he drove an old truck, and that he believed quietly and without fanfare that patience was the one lesson worth teaching above all the others. Somewhere in a closet in Millhaven, the grey steel lockbox still sits on a shelf, empty now, kept by his daughter not for what it once held, but for what it proved. A man on an ordinary salary, in an ordinary town, had quietly built an extraordinary life, one $25 deduction at a time. Wait.